Who's putting pressure on her? Whose fault is it? So who takes accountability for things like that? That's where I take a really big problem when it comes to things like that, is that nobody wants to take accountability. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I want to talk to you about a little something. You all probably know about the Naomi Osaka story that just came out. I'm not going to really focus a lot more on her, but I think there's an important lesson and an important subject matter that surrounds her, which is an issue around mental health and depression. So I'm going to just give you a rundown of my own personal experiences and what I've gone through and what I think people need to really understand about some of these things, because a lot of time people don't really understand what's really going on. You know, we always hear about somebody who struggles from mental disorder or depression or whatever the case may be. And, you know, some people commit suicide in the end. You know, some celebrities who have committed suicide. We know Robin Williams. We know people like Chris Benoit. We know people like Lee Thompson-Young, who was one of my favorite actors who I grew up watching, starring in the famous Jet Jackson. Now, some of you might notice some awkwardness in the manner in which I speak. And I'm going to talk about the reason behind that, or why I speak the way that I speak. And sometimes I have to inhale, I have to take deep breaths, because I struggle with something called a speech disorder or speech impediments. Now, a lot of you probably know it, or you're familiar with it through what people see as stuttering. Now, you probably know a lot of people who stutter a lot. Steve Harvey stutters. You know, he struggle with extreme stuttering. The United States President Joe Biden struggled with stuttering as well. But why is it that they sort of like overcame and they are now really successful people? And it seems like they don't even stutter at all. Joe Biden, sometimes we can kind of see it a little bit. You know, I think you've noticed it.
Vice President Biden, your response, please.
My response is, look, this isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey.
Because he does stutter a little bit. Maybe because he's getting older as well. So I'm going to take you through a rundown of what I went through in my own disorder, or my own challenges with this mental thing, because it is a mental challenge. And I want to kind of get you guys to really understand what really goes on when somebody struggles with a mental disability. It took me a long time to know that I struggle with mental disability, because you become misunderstood a lot. But I had to teach myself, especially coming from rural area or coming from a very disadvantaged area, in a very rural space in Limpopo, where you don't have facilities and access to a lot of knowledge about these things at all. And you have to sort of like, you know, just work with what you got. So what goes on with the brain when you stutter is breathing. It's all in the breathing, really. What people don't really realize is that speaking and breathing at the same time is actually a skill. You might not realize it because you automatically do it. It's so automatic that you don't even think about it anymore. Kind of like when you first learn how to drive a car. Now you can do a lot of things in the car. You can eat while you drive. You can talk on the phone. You shouldn't do it, but you can talk on the phone while you drive. You can do multiple things, multitask while you drive. But when you started, it was kind of like you have to learn all these different gears and shifts and everything. Same thing with that. We adjust as we go. When you speak, you use a lot of syllables. You pronounce a lot of words. Your brain has to calculate just the exact amount of breath that you must inhale when you speak. When you speak, you exhale. So it calculates just about enough enough oxygen that you need in order to speak certain words or within a sentence. And it does all these calculations and computing automatically. We don't even think about it anymore. We don't count the number of words we use in a sentence. We just kind of do it automatically, as I said, you know. So when you really kind of think about it, it's really interesting, because your brain also has to focus on what it's trying to say while it thinks. So there's a lot of activities that go on. But for you or for a lot of people, because you don't really think about that at all, there are people who actually have to think about that. There are words that get them tripped up because they just somehow just get them jammed up. You have to actually think about which word to use, and you forgot that you actually need to inhale because you're not breathing, because you're stuck in one word that tripped you somewhere. Might be the K's, might be the T's, or might be the S's. But, that's typically what happens. And you have to now try and focus on breathing. You have to now try and focus on which words to use. Then you have to now try and focus on the people that are listening to you and everything. And it can be a nightmare. It can be gruesome. But I got over it, and how I got over it was really interesting. Maybe I might make a different video about that in future, just for people's sake. Maybe so you can learn better or understand better. But just to kind of give you a summary of that, I had to kind of like trick the brain by using my imagination. You sort of have to imagine yourself in different environments. You have to remove yourself from where you are, the reality of what you're dealing with and facing. Because sometimes the brain and the mind and the body are not necessarily working in sync together. Because when you dream, when you're sleeping, you don't stutter. You don't dream as a stutterer. It's just more of a physical thing in your reality. So I had to kind of learn how to trick my brain a lot. And I had to learn to also understand sometimes it's your sitting posture, sometimes it's the room temperature, if there's the aircon and stuff like that. I learned that when I was sitting in the boardroom a lot, in the corporate environment. It often became really, really difficult to kind of like, you want to contribute in a conversation and so on, but you can't. There's a lot you want to say, but you just can't because you've got a problem. So, with that said, yeah, I've learned to compute different words to replace certain words. To a point where it sort of becomes automatic, as some of you might be wondering, but I don't sound like I stutter. You don't get to see that. You don't hear it, but, I've improved because I've improved and I've done a lot of work. So with that said, this is just to kind of get you guys to understand what really goes on with regards to someone who's struggling with something like a mental like anxiety. When Naomi Osaka came out and said that she struggles with anxiety, especially when she has to come out and talk to the press and everything, she feels anxious and so on, because she's been struggling with depression. A lot of people kind of feel like, okay, first of all, the powers that be did not take that too kindly. A lot of athletes like Stephen Curry, like Serena Williams, they were showing their support to her, and I was really surprised by some of the tweets from some individuals who felt like she was acting entitled or she didn't understand her role as an athlete, and that part of her contractual obligations are that she needs to show up in order to keep making the money for those who have invested in her. Now, I've got a bit of a problem with that in the sense that I understand the business aspect of what we are obligated to do, but it just becomes a problem when we commoditize people instead of what they do, and when we no longer differentiate between what they do and the commodity that it generates, as opposed to them being individuals who are entitled to being individuals, to being people. I don't think a lot of people really realize the kind of stress that it can really have, the kind of toll that it takes on a person. It doesn't matter how much money you get paid to do anything, but the moment you can't be yourself, or the moment you can't express yourself as a person and what you go through in any industry, in any job role, it just never works out, right? It's just a big red flag right there. It's not a wonder that a lot of celebrities commit suicide. They do drugs. There's a lot that goes on. That's not right. When they commit suicide, of course, a lot of us go onto social media and we tweet, we'll miss them, their music, their videos, and so on. But you forget that we are also contributing into that culture that commoditizes them as though they do not have an identity or a life of their own, or they should not be able to express themselves when they're not feeling comfortable with something. I think there are better ways of, having athletes and celebrities fulfill their obligations or their roles, and still making money for these organizations that make money around them as a brand, without having to treat them as though they are not people or they are not human. It really is weird, because we don't really know these people. They are people. They have personalities. They have character dynamics and so on. So what really bothers me about this is the fact that she mentioned anxiety. She mentioned depression. So what if she had a panic attack of some sort, and then somebody gave her something, and to kind of calm her nerves down, and then she overdosed, and then she died? What was the organizers going to say? What were the press going to say? She couldn't handle the pressure. Who's putting pressure on her? Whose fault is it? So who takes accountability for things like that? That's where I take a really big problem when it comes to things like that, is that nobody wants to take accountability for the resulting factors of what we encourage and what we build, while we invalidate people and their personal experiences, their disorders and the different stuff that they're going through. It takes a lot for somebody to come out of that, to come out of your shell. I had to put myself through a lot of activities, a lot of things. I had to do debating, I had to do drama, I had to do a lot of things, and I had some embarrassing moments as well, where sometimes I just stand in front of the crowd and words aren't coming out, and they're looking at me like, entertain us. Say something, Yeah, sure. You have your expectations of what we should do or what people should do, but also understand that they have expectations of themselves. And everybody's role and number one job is to take care of themselves first before anybody else. And if anybody says otherwise to that, to hell with them. Okay? And I commend her for taking the high road. I commend her for speaking up. I think more of these conversations should be had, because they are important. They are very, very important. I think a person dying is one person too much, because they are connected to somebody. Every human being is connected to somebody. They are a brother, sister, mother, friend to somebody. And I just thought I should share this with you guys, that we need to think very carefully when we talk about these type of topics and subjects. I'm praying for you, girl. I hope you get through your anxiety. You're not going to watch this video. She's not going to watch this video, but this is generally for those individuals who are probably going to watch this video. Probably 100 people, but that's fine anyway. If you do suffer through depression, anxiety of any sort, or mental disorder, you're not the only one. Just know that you don't need to validate yourself on the basis of how others feel you ought to be, how you ought to behave, how you ought to look like in society. Take care of yourself, take care of you. Do everything that you need to do possible to take care of yourself. And pray. Pray, study your Bible, pray. And that's all I have to say for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Do like the video, do leave a comment. If you want to watch more videos or catch up with what I do in future, hit that notification bell and subscribe. And I'll see you in my next video. All right, thanks. Bye. God bless.